I used to believe that the things that mattered most could wait, that the important conversations, the apologies, the time spent with people I loved, would always be there when I finally decided to give them my full attention. My name is Robert, and I'm 86 years old, and I've been sitting with a question that comes to me more often now than I would like, which is why I was so certain there would always be more time. When you're young, time feels wide and forgiving. You make decisions as if there's a quiet understanding between you and the world that you'll be given another chance, another season, another moment to make things right. I lived most of my life with that feeling, not consciously, but in the way I postponed things that felt difficult or uncomfortable. I grew up in a house where we didn't say much about what we felt. My father worked long hours, my mother kept the home running, and whatever needed to be said usually stayed unsaid. It wasn't unkind, just quiet in a way that teaches you early on that feelings are something you carry on your own. So I learned to keep things moving. School, work, responsibilities, all the visible parts of life that give you a sense of direction. And when something deeper came up, something that required sitting still and speaking honestly, I would tell myself I'd get to it later, when things were less busy, when I felt more ready, when the moment seemed right. That moment rarely came. I met my wife in my late 20s. She had a way of noticing things, small changes in tone, the kind of attention that makes you feel seen even when you're not trying to be. In the beginning, that felt comforting. Later, I think it made me a little uneasy, though I didn't have the words for it at the time. She would ask me questions that went just a little deeper than I was used to, not in a demanding way, just gently, as if she believed there was more to me than what I was offering. Most of the time, I gave her what I thought was enough: a short answer, a reassuring smile, a promise that everything was fine. And most of the time, I believed it. We built a life together that looked solid from the outside. We worked, we raised children, we kept things running. There was no great conflict, nothing that would make a story people would point to and say something went wrong. But there were things we didn't say to each other, and I always assumed there would be time to say them later. There were evenings when she would sit at the kitchen table a little longer than usual, as if waiting for something. I would notice it, of course, but I would tell myself she was just tired, or thinking about her day, or that if she needed to say something, she would. I didn't understand that sometimes people are waiting for you to meet them halfway, and that waiting doesn't last forever. Years passed the way they tend to, one into another, steady and predictable. I told myself that when things slowed down, when work demanded less of me, when the children were grown, I would finally give more of myself to the people who had been there all along. When that time came, I didn't recognize it at first. The house grew quieter as the children moved on with their lives. The routines changed. There was more space, more silence, more opportunity to sit across from each other and speak about things that had been set aside for years. And still, I found ways to keep things on the surface. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I had practiced for so long not going deeper that I didn't know how to begin. Then she got sick. Even now, I can remember the way the room felt when we first heard the word the doctor used. It changed something immediately, though I didn't fully understand how much at the time. There was suddenly a sense that time was no longer something we could assume, but something we had to consider. You would think that would have been enough for me to change, to finally say all the things I had been holding back, to to sit with her and speak honestly about what she meant to me, about the life we had built, about the things I was afraid of losing. I told myself I would. But even then I kept waiting for the right moment, for a day when she seemed stronger, for a conversation that felt natural, for a time when I could say it all without it feeling awkward or forced. I didn't want to overwhelm her, I told myself. I didn't want to say things at the wrong time. So I waited. There were small chances, I see them clearly now, moments when she looked at me as if she was about to ask something, or as if she was hoping I might say something first. Moments when the room was quiet enough, when there were no distractions, when all that was needed was a few honest words. I let those moments pass. When she died, it was not sudden, but it still felt like something had been taken before I was ready. And the truth is, I was never going to feel ready. That was the mistake I made all along, believing that readiness would come before action, instead of understanding that sometimes you have to speak before you feel prepared. In the years since, I have thought often about those conversations we never had, not in a way that punishes me, but in a way that keeps me company. I wonder what she would have said, what I might have learned if I had been willing to listen more openly, to speak more honestly. It's a quiet kind of regret, not loud or dramatic, but steady. I see it in other parts of my life as well. Friends I meant to call but didn't. Apologies I thought about making but postponed. Time I could have spent differently but assumed I would make up for later. Later is a comfortable idea when you believe it will always be there. At 86, I can tell you that later is not something you can rely on, not in the way we tend to imagine it. It doesn't arrive as a clear opportunity, neatly presented and easy to recognize. It slips in quietly, and just as quietly it can pass you by. I'm not telling you this as a warning or as advice. I don't think life works that way. People don't change because they're told to. They change when something in them shifts enough to make a different choice possible. For me, that shift came slowly after there was no longer anyone to say these things to in the way I had intended, and so I say them now in the only way I can. If there is someone in your life you keep meaning to speak to more honestly, more openly, I hope you don't wait for the moment to feel perfect. It rarely does. The words may come out uneven. The timing may not feel ideal. What matters is that they are said. I spent many years believing that time was something I could arrange around my comfort, that I could delay what was difficult until I felt more certain. What I understand now is that time moves without asking whether you're ready, and the opportunities it carries with it don't always return. There is a kind of quiet that comes with age, and in that quiet, you begin to hear things more clearly, not just the sounds around you, but the thoughts you once pushed aside, the realizations that took years to form. This is one of mine. I thought there would always be more time, and because of that, I let too much of it pass without saying what mattered most. If you are still in a place where those words can be spoken, where those conversations can still happen, then perhaps you don't need to wait the way I did. Not everything has to be said perfectly. It just has to be said while there is still someone there to hear it. That is something I learned late, but it is something I carry with me now in the quiet, where time feels different and where I finally understand what it was I kept putting off. I invite you to listen to other life stories in this channel. You never know what you can learn and apply to your life. Thank you for listening to my story. I really appreciate it. Please like and share with others. Thank you.